When you're only 20, in college and enjoying life, the last thing you expect would be a life-threatening illness. But that's exactly what happened when that 20-year-old was diagnosed with a cancerous tumor behind his right nostril, leading to over 30 surgeries, scarring, and disfigurement. Now, it is a story of courage and hope captured in his book, At Face Value, My Triumph Over Disfiguring Cancer. And I'm very happy to welcome to Bay Area people that author and that young man, Terry Healey. Thanks for joining us together.
Thanks for having me, Rosy.
Really an interesting story about what happened to you. And I guess at this point in time, it's been 20 plus years since your surgery. Are you at all self-conscious about your face?
You know, I became content with who I was over the years and very comfortable with who I am. And it's amazing how self-image impacts so much of your life. Today I can walk down the street and I don't notice people looking at me differently, whereas when I didn't feel good about myself, I noticed everybody staring at me.
But you were 20 years old. I mean, what young person, male or female, isn't so conscious or conscientious about the way they look?
Exactly. I mean, I think when I was diagnosed, unfortunately, that's at an age when appearances matter so much. You know, that's what you're thinking about a lot. So.
Exactly. Now, let's go back. You were at Cal. You were a senior.
Yes.
You're from the Bay Area, so you were living here, going to school, having a great, fun life.
Yes.
President of your fraternity, getting ready to do your last year, and several people, including your brother, said they noticed a little dot or a little bump under your nose.
Yeah, a few incidents occurred where people commented about my nostril being flared out, but the funny thing was it took going down to Sproul Hall, the Cal administration building, and picking up that student ID card and looking at the photograph. And that's when I had to take that double take and realize that there is something funny about my nose.
And
there
just
is
looking
something
at yourself
distorted.
in the mirror every day, you just never really noticed
it. So it's amazing what a picture can do versus shaving and brushing my teeth never did for me in terms of opening my eyes.
And there was no pain or any telltale signs?
I never had any pain associated with it.
Okay. So once you decided to do something about it, because I know you had some nosebleeds.
Yes.
What happened? Who did you go to?
So I finally went to a doctor in Oakland, and the long story short is over a period of about 8 weeks of visits and a biopsy, I finally got the diagnosis that I had this really rare form of cancer called a fibrosarcoma. So it's about 0.5% of all cancers, and mine's a subclass of that. So.
Wow. And also, in addition, it was unusual that it was on your face as opposed to in your body.
Exactly. Great point. Typically, sarcomas occur in the legs and in the arms, not typically in the head and neck.
Okay. So you had it removed. Good news. You got it taken care of. You went about your business.
Exactly. Started taking life for granted again. Everything was great again. In fact, got a clean bill of health from the second CAT scan I had. Everything looked great. And with sarcomas, typically they recur pretty quickly. So that was really good news for me to have a clean bill of health in 6 months. And then, out of the blue, it came back. And that's when it became a much more serious situation.
And when it came back, I guess, in a big way because it did affect the right side of your face.
Yeah, unfortunately, when it came back, I could feel a little bit of it, but most of it was behind what you could see. And so it was a little bit different than the first time. And it necessitated the removal, ultimately, of half of my nose, the shelf of my right eye, the muscle and the bone from my right cheek, part of my upper lip, part of my hard palate, and then 6 of my teeth.
So this sarcoma was in your bone. It wasn't a tumor behind the bone.
It's a sarcoma is a tumor of the connective tissue, which can be anything from your tissue to your muscles to your nerves and even into the bone. So it makes it very complicated to treat.
We have just a couple of pictures that we got from your book, so we just want to show people what we're talking about. First, as a young man, happy, having a great time in college, and this is what the old Terry looked like, right? And this is the Terry that you thought you might be able to get back after your surgery.
Exactly.
And then the second shows some of the trauma that you went through. And why don't you explain this photograph?
Yeah, so I just kind of described what was removed, but what I woke up with from that procedure was I was attached to my chest because they had transplanted a full-thickness skin graft from my chest to fill in that cavity that had been created on my face. And so it's a live skin graft. Basically, it's connected for 2 to 3 weeks. I think in my case it was 2 weeks. When it gets its own blood supply at the donor site or at the site where it's being transplanted, then it's removed, it's cut off, and attached back to the actual site where it came from. So that tissue that was on my cheek and in my nose came from my chest, or actually my shoulder.
So they used your own skin. It was just your own skin graft in a way. And you kind of referred to yourself a couple of times as your own elephant man.
Exactly.
In the way you look. But even though when you wake up and you see that, that's kind of traumatic, everything seemed like it was going on track. They got the cancer and they began the process of rebuilding your face.
Yes, and I have to credit my doctor, Crumley, from UCSF, because he was this guy that was very confident that not only would he get me cured, but he'd also get me reconstructed. And so I think that was really important that I believed that throughout the process. Ultimately, I learned over the years that that became a much more difficult proposition to get me reconstructed back to who I was. And it seemed like every procedure I went through created a need for yet another procedure and another setback. And so took me a while to figure that out, to begin to realize that.
So you found the sarcoma in the 80s. In 1991 was your last, we're going to just jump ahead a little bit, was your very last surgery. You went back east to Chicago to have it done.
I did.
And even now, you could have more theoretically if you wanted to, but you decided to stop.
Yeah, I had some key turning points in my life in 1991 that really opened my eyes to the fact that, my life work shouldn't be about having surgery and trying to become that person I was before, but my life work should really be about learning to accept who I am, learning to live with who I am, and ultimately, give back, because I was saved. And so my whole attitude kind of changed, and I don't credit myself as much as other people that really helped me open my eyes to the fact that my insecurity wasn't going to be solved by having more and more surgery.
I mean, no one could blame you with the fact that your face was going through many surgeries, and you still had to put yourself out there and go to parties and go to bars and go to work and go to school and put up with a lot of staring. And did you feel that people were looking at you out of curiosity, out of pity, or just looking because you were different looking? I mean, how did you interpret that?
That's a great question. I don't know if I've thought about that much. I think it was all of the above. I was very sensitive to it, though, and so my reactions were not controlled reactions.
Right. Sometimes
I would be nice, sometimes I would get angry, sometimes I would tell stories, I would make up lies, because it was my way of dealing with it. But it got to be pretty old, to the point where I think I started removing myself from those types of situations, unfortunately. And that's when I began to kind of sink lower and lower, because I was kind of removing myself from normal life and saying, I don't want to go to parties anymore.
Right. Now, at this point in time, you're a motivational speaker, among other things, and an author, etc. You do travel around the country. You do speak to cancer patients, cancer survivors. You're active in the Wellness Center here in the Bay Area. What is your bottom line message that, no matter what, you could persevere, I suppose?
Yeah, it really is. We can all get through anything that's thrown at us. And I often hear people say, I could never go through what you went through. I think people underestimate themselves. And the gift that comes out of it is the beautiful part of it, right? I mean, the fact that now I can give back, and that's being able to inspire other people is something that I could never have asked for as a gift.
Well, I'll tell people that at face value is a great book, because it's a good read, it's easy reading, but also it really does tell Terry's story about how he was able to survive, and courageously so. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you so much.
And I guess we'll be seeing you around, because you live here in the Bay Area.
I do.
All right. Thank you very much, Terry. Okay, coming up next, a chance to see and hear the legendary Dionne Warwick perform is for a great cause, too. So don't go away. Details when we come back.